Hello everybody, welcome to chapter 1. This is an introductory chapter, so I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. Almost everything you see on the screen you will have in your student handout, so that's why I'm going to go through it rapidly. But this is a video, so if you need to click pause, please do that a lot to be able to pick up all of these ideas. Alright, let's go ahead and talk about what economics is all about. This is, after all, probably the first economics course that many of you have taken. There's some definitions you need to understand. These two right here. Scarcity. We can't spend an infinite number of dollars, and neither can anybody in society, no matter how rich you are. And then economics is what we're studying here. It is, at its very heart, how does an individual cope with that scarcity? Why do they buy the certain things they do given their budget constraints? So this is kind of the things we're looking at. We look at individuals, what they buy. We look at firms, how much they produce. And then we'll also look at how society decides to divide its resources. Sometimes they decide to build freeways. Sometimes they decide to start a war. The resources are allocated in different ways, and so we're going to go ahead and study that. Okay, principle number 1. What is the things that are going to follow? I have 10 principles which we're going to talk about. The first 7 are really pertinent to our class, and then the last 3 we'll go over quickly because they kind of give you some general economics insights. This first principle is people face trade-offs. All decisions involve trade-offs. Some of you guys may have heard it as there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? No matter what, even if someone were to offer you a free lunch, it would still cost you the amount of time it would take to sit and consume that lunch, okay? So this first bullet point you might be aware of. If you go to a party the night before your midterm, you're going to lose out in times for studying, and you also will probably be more tired in your midterm. That's an example of a trade-off, okay? In society, overall, we have an important trade-off: efficiency versus equality. Efficiency is the most production possible in a society. Imagine a society with one very large monopolist firm that made all the profit and all consumers made zero profit. If that was the maximum total production and total profit possible given the social production function, then we would still call that efficiency. However, that's not very equal, which is this next word right here, equality. That's not equal at all because one person is getting all of the profit or the benefit from the production. Okay, but there is definitely a trade-off. Right here, I have that highlighted. There's a trade-off. And sometimes we have to decrease efficiency in order to get equality, or sometimes if we give up some equality, we might be able to have gains in efficiency, i.e. more production. Okay? Principle number 2, the cost of something is what you give up to get it. We call this the opportunity cost. All right, you've got to memorize this word right here. The opportunity cost is whatever must be given up to obtain it. This is actually one of our most important costs that we have here in economics. Okay, so do not forget about that. Here's an example. Going to college for a year, is not just the tuition, but it's also the foregone wages. The free lunch I talked about earlier, the cost of the free lunch was the time that you would spend sitting there. Okay, now principle number 3, rational people think at the margin. All right, a rational person is someone who systematically tries to achieve what's best for them. We actually, in economics, believe that all people act rationally. Now, if we see someone that looks like they're not being rational, that's because we don't understand what they're trying to, objectives they're trying to achieve. And then they also make these decisions at the margin. Okay, you guys got to think of the margin as like the one step forward. So if I'm a firm, my marginal decision, if I'm producing 20 units of output, my marginal decision will be, should I produce this 21st unit of output? And it has nothing to do with the number of the quantity that I'm producing currently, or the sunk cost, the money I've put into the firm thus far. Has nothing to do with this marginal change. Okay, so here we go. When we're talking about college, at the beginning of every year, you have to decide whether or not you're going to go back to college for the next term, for the next 2 semesters, All right, it doesn't matter how much you've already invested in your college career. If this next 1 year of college is not worth the cost, if the benefit you're going to get is not worth the cost, you will forego education. However, if it is worth it, you will do that extra year at university. All right, and here's another example. All right, incentives. We all respond to incentives. So an incentive is something that induces someone to do an action. All right, you can have negative and positive incentives, and rational people respond to these incentives. All right, so here's some examples. Whoops. Here's some examples of incentives. These make a lot of sense to you. All right, let's kind of put this all together and apply this principle, especially principle number 3, people face trade-offs, and principles number 4, which is rational people are thinking at the margin. So you're selling your 1996 Mustang. You already have spent $1,000 on repairs. Now that $1,000 is a sunk cost. It actually does not matter in this problem at all. At the last minute, the transmission dies, so you can pay $600 to have it repaired or sell the car as is. Your marginal decision now is this question: should I have the transmission repaired? The cost is $600, so your marginal cost is $600. Now, we have to figure out if it's worth it, so we have to figure out what the marginal benefit is. So here we go. We have $6,500 if the transmission works, $57 if it doesn't. Okay, $6,500 minus $5,700 is $800. So the benefit of a working transmission is $800 extra dollars. Okay, and we can see right here it's only cost $600 to have it repaired. Looking at these two numbers right here, the benefit is $5,700, so $800 is greater than $600. So yes, you should definitely repair in this situation. Okay, let's go ahead and look at the other option. Blue book value is $6,000 if transmission works, $5,500 if it doesn't. Okay, let's compare these numbers this time. $6,000 and $5,500. That's only $500 difference. Okay, so the marginal benefit is $500. It's less than the marginal cost of $600. So in this case, we should not actually repair the transmission. We should just sell the car as is. All right, and here is a little bit of explanation, the math, and I'll let you look at that. Okay, so here's what I was telling you before. The $1,000 you previously spent on repairs is irrelevant. That's a sunk cost. We're only looking at the margin, which is that next one step that we're going to have to take. All right, principle number 5, trade can make everyone better off. We are definitely going to talk a lot about trade in this class, and whoops, that's not what I meant to do. We're going to talk a lot about trade in this class, and we're going to talk about the conditions under which trade makes everybody better off. Even a really high producing individual is able to benefit from trading with a lower producing individual under the right circumstances. So we'll talk about that later on in the class. All right, the truths about trade for individuals are also true for countries, as its second bullet point shows. All right, markets are usually a good way to organize economic activity. This is principle number 6. A market is a group of buyers and sellers. It doesn't have to be in a single location. eBay is a marketplace, and nobody's located in one place. Organized economic activity means these things right here: what to produce, how much, and who gets them. Right? If you think about it, these are really important questions to answer that the market takes care of all by itself, and we'll show you how that works later on in the course. Okay? So this market economy is something that a lot of economists advocate, and basically it means letting the consumers and the producers argue amongst themselves to decide how much they're going to produce and what prices they're going to produce at, and then let the people with the highest amounts of dollar value of money be able to take those goods home. Okay? So there's this invisible hand idea, and basically the invisible hand idea is it picks up goods that are produced and gives them to buyers that wants them, and it does this invisibly. Actually, it's just through the coordination of buyers and sellers arguing amongst each other for the price, but this is called the invisible hand because it's as if a hand picks up goods from the producers and gives them to the consumers who value them the highest. Okay? Number 7, governments can sometimes improve market outcomes. So we need this really important idea, property rights. This is important for you to remember. Property rights, without property rights, we can't guarantee that a producer will want to produce even if he's going to make a profit, because the factory or perhaps the profits themselves might be stolen in the absence of strict property rights. Okay? So people are way less inclined to work if they're going to have their goods stolen. A market failure, okay, is when for some reason this open market economy where buyers and sellers are arguing for the price and trying to get the best price, when this doesn't end up working, okay? And the main reason that this doesn't work is externalities. So, for example, pollution or overfishing. If my purchase of a good affects a third party that doesn't have any say in the production or the consumption of the good, then that's an externality. Whether it's a good or a bad outside benefit, it's called an externality. This can cause a problem. Also, market power. All right, so if I don't have a whole bunch of buyers or sellers, think of a monopoly, they can charge whatever they want with impunity, and this can make society arrive at a less than beneficial conclusion. Okay? So if we go ahead and have the government step in here at this time, if there's externalities or market power, it promotes efficiency. Now remember earlier we talked about how markets are a good way to organize activity. However, if in the case of externalities or market power, we might want the government to step in and promote efficiency. Okay? They also might be able to promote equity. This is generally, remember we talked earlier, there's this trade-off between equity and efficiency. So it might be in everyone's best interest to make the society a little bit less efficient perhaps, but promoting equity. Okay? All right, now we're going to go quickly through these last 3 because they're more of a macro idea, and we're not going to really talk about these too much. Okay? So a standard of living, it's basically that's how good it is to live in the country. It depends on its production. Okay? So the higher the production, the higher the standard of living in a country. We call this productivity, and it basically is how much of each thing that a worker can make. Prices rise when the government prints too much money. We call this inflation. Okay? The only reason for inflation is when the government is printing too much money. There's no other economic justification for inflation than the government printing too much money. Too much money is out there, too much money is being spent, so prices have to rise to absorb all that extra money. Finally, there's a short-run trade-off between inflation and unemployment. So you can make inflation go very high in the short run, and because people have more money, they will buy more goods, employers will need to hire more people, the unemployment rate will go down. However, like we saw in principle number 9, basically all that's going to do is drive up prices in the long run, and then these same people who were unemployed and got jobs are going to become unemployed again when the prices rise. And that's the end of chapter 1.